Your men can't resist me, she smirked after taking my fiancé. So I introduced her to a handsome millionaire who destroyed her life. The FBI showed up at dawn. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My sister stole every boyfriend I ever dated. Your men can't resist me, she smirked after taking my fiancé. So I introduced her to a handsome millionaire who destroyed her life. The FBI showed up at dawn. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. It feels strange to say it out loud, but I believe, deep in my bones, that I was cursed with a built-in boyfriend thief the day my younger sister Brenda was born. Now, I don't mean the cute, innocent stuff you see in movies, like borrowing sweaters without asking or having a harmless crush on the same boy in middle school. No, this was a different beast entirely. I'm talking about a systematic, methodical kind of theft. The kind where if I brought a new man home, someone I was genuinely starting to build a life with, you could set a watch to how long it would take for her to have him wrapped around her little finger. A few weeks, a month at most. It was a pattern, as reliable and destructive as the seasons. If I introduced someone to my parents at our traditional Sunday dinner, I knew she'd be sliding into his DMs with some concocted emergency before the leftover pot roast was even put away. If I dared to post a happy, smiling photo of us on Instagram, you could bet your life savings she would orchestrate an accidental run-in with him at his favorite coffee shop the very next morning. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Everyone in our orbit had a neat little saying for it. Brenda got your mother's stunning looks, Judith, while you were blessed with your father's sharp wit. They said it with a smile, as if they were handing out perfectly balanced party favors. But to a young girl, it never felt balanced. It felt like a consolation prize. I learned to live with it, to embrace my role as the smart one, the witty one. It was my designated lane. But the platitudes and the forced smiles all turned to ash in my mouth the day the boyfriend stealing began in earnest. It started subtly, back in high school. I was dating a boy named Scott. He was the classic all-American boy, captain of the football team, sweet, a little goofy, but he was mine. All of a sudden, he started insisting on coming over to my house to study every single afternoon. I was thrilled. I thought he just wanted to be closer to me, to soak up the quiet comfort of my family's home. Looking back, I can see the whole scene with painful clarity. I'd be upstairs, struggling with a history paper, and Brenda would just float down the stairs, a vision in her cheerleading uniform. She'd chew on the end of her pen, flutter those impossibly long eyelashes, and sigh, "Oh, Scott, you're so good at calculus. I'm just going to fail for sure. Could you maybe look at this one problem for me?" Her voice was always so breathy, so full of helpless vulnerability. I saw nothing wrong with it. I trusted my sister. I trusted my boyfriend. I didn't see the intricate web she was weaving, even as I was getting tangled in it. The signs were there, of course, flashing like a neon beer sign in a dark bar, but I was too young and too trusting to read them. By the time we stumbled into our 20s, Brenda's tactics had graduated from high school manipulation to something far more precise, almost surgical. The innocent act was gone, replaced by a cold, calculated efficiency. I dated a wonderful man named Keith for 6 solid months. He was an architect, kind and steady. I finally felt he was different, that we were different. I felt safe enough to bring him home. That was my mistake. Exactly 1 week after that Sunday dinner, a dinner where Brenda had been on her absolute best behavior, she manufactured a crisis. A dramatic, tear-filled fight with her roommate, I believe it was. She called Keith at 2 a.m, her voice thick with sobs, telling him she had nowhere else to go and needed a shoulder to cry on. He, being the good man I thought he was, went to her apartment to be her knight in shining armor. They slept together that night. He confessed the next morning, his face a mask of pathetic, hollow guilt. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just told him to get his things and get out of my apartment. After Keith, I was more careful. I met Russell at the marketing agency where I worked. I had just gotten a significant promotion to project manager, and he was a graphic designer on my team. He was smart, funny, creative, and for the first time, I felt like I was with an equal. We kept our relationship quiet for a while, but eventually, you have to merge your worlds. The family dinner was inevitable. And the playbook repeated itself with terrifying precision. A different manufactured emergency, a different late-night comfort session. But this time, the discovery was so much worse. I was on his laptop, with his full permission, looking for a file for our shared project. And I saw them. The message notifications popping up. Messages from Brenda. Steamy, explicit messages that made my stomach turn. They were detailed, graphic, and they left nothing to the imagination. When I confronted her, my hands shaking, the evidence right there on my phone, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She had the audacity to just tilt her head, arrange her face into that familiar mask of sweet, innocent concern, and say, "I'm just making sure they're worthy of you, Judy. I'm just testing them." She even batted her eyelashes, a parody of sisterly love. And Russell? I'm sorry, but he failed the test. Miserably. The sickest part? A small, broken piece of me, a part that had been worn down by years of this, actually had to admit she had a point. If these men I had given my heart to, could be swayed so easily, then maybe they weren't meant for me after all. But that cold, rational thought was a tiny lifeboat in an ocean of betrayal. It did nothing to soothe the fire in my chest. It felt like I was being hollowed out from the inside, again and again, by the one person who was supposed to be my closest ally. My mother, bless her heart, was completely useless. In fact, she was an accomplice in my emotional undoing. I will never, ever forget that Thanksgiving. I was in my mid-20s, still raw from the Russell incident. I was trying so hard to just get through the day with a smile on my face. I was in the kitchen, helping her with the gravy, the familiar scent of sage and turkey usually a comfort, but that day it felt suffocating. The whole family was there, the low hum of conversation from the dining room. She pulled me closer, not even making eye contact, just staring intently at the swirling brown liquid in the pot. Her voice was a low, sharp hiss, as pointed as the carving knife my dad was wielding on the turkey. "You need to stop parading these men in front of Brenda, Judith," she said. "She's sensitive. She can't control herself when you dangle temptation right under her nose. Why do you keep setting her up to fail?" I froze, the ladle heavy in my hand. Did I hear her right? I was dangling temptation? I was setting her up to fail? In her twisted narrative, I wasn't the victim being repeatedly betrayed, I was the careless, cruel instigator. I wasn't trying to find love, I was tormenting my poor, beautiful, weak-willed sister. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. I just stirred the gravy, the silence stretching between us, and in that moment, in the warmth of my childhood kitchen, I had never felt so cold and alone. And then there was Walter. Walter was the one who nearly destroyed me completely. He was different from the others. We were together for 2 solid, wonderful years. This wasn't a fling, this was a partnership. We were talking about a marriage, picking out rings, debating the merits of a spring versus a fall wedding. He was waiting for me to finish my nursing degree before we took the next step. He was patient, he was kind, he was my rock. I had finally, after all the pain, allowed myself to believe that I had found my person. For his 30th birthday, I threw him a huge surprise party at the local Applebee's. It was his favorite place, unpretentious and comfortable. I spent weeks planning it, coordinating with all his friends from work, his college buddies. I wanted it to be perfect. Brenda, of course, was there. She made a point of arriving late, ensuring all eyes were on her. And she got wasted. Not happy, fun drunk, but sloppy, obnoxious drunk. The time came for the cake. Everyone gathered around the table, a chorus of off-key happy birthday filling the restaurant. Walter leaned forward, a huge smile on his face, ready to blow out the candles. And that's when she made her move. She stumbled forward, threw her arms around his neck, and kissed him. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was a deep, sloppy, possessive kiss, right there in front of me, in front of his mother, in front of everyone we knew. The singing stopped. The entire restaurant seemed to fall silent. The party died in that one humiliating moment. The aftermath was a blur of quiet, tense car rides and long, tear-filled arguments that went nowhere. In the end, after days of agonizing indecision, he chose her. And to pour salt, lemon juice, and acid into the gaping wound, Brenda posted a picture of the two of them on Facebook a week later, smiling, looking for all the world like the happy new couple. The caption was the final, brutal twist of the knife: sometimes you just can't help who you fall for. Sorry not sorry. That phrase, sorry not sorry, became a toxic mantra in my head, a symbol of her complete and utter lack of remorse. It was the final nail in the coffin of the person I used to be. After Walter, I shut down. I buried myself in my work. I finished my nursing degree with top honors and took a demanding job on the surgical floor of the biggest hospital in the city. The 12-hour shifts were grueling, both physically and emotionally, but they were a blessing. They left no room in my head for anything else. For a long, long time, I didn't even consider dating. The very thought of it, of opening myself up to that possibility again, of having to navigate the inevitable introduction to Brenda, felt like volunteering to be run over by a truck. It seemed my fate was to be alone, forever caught in this heartbreaking loop. Then, about 3 months after that catastrophic night at Applebee's, something shifted. My old college roommate, Sarah, was getting married in Chicago. She begged me to come. I almost said no. The idea of attending a wedding, a celebration of the very thing I felt was permanently out of my reach, felt like a special kind of torture. But Sarah was insistent. So I bought a dress, booked a flight, and went, determined to plaster a smile on my face for 48 hours. And that's where I met Stanley. Stanley was everything I thought I'd never find. He was a software engineer, tall and kind, with a quick, easy laugh that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He was smart, but not arrogant. Confident, but not cocky. And most importantly, he seemed to have a built-in radar for bullshit. He valued honesty and directness. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like a man was seeing me, Judith, not just a prelude to my more beautiful sister. This time, I swore, would be different. This small, fragile spark of hope was mine, and I would protect it with everything I had. For 8 wonderful, peaceful months, Stanley was my secret. It was like living a double life, and it was exhilarating. We created our own little world, separate from my toxic family. We'd drive to little towns an hour away for our dates, exploring antique shops and hole-in-the-wall diners where no one knew our names. We took long walks in parks, went to indie movie theaters. We never, ever posted a photo of us on social media. I didn't tell a single soul about him. He was mine. I thought I had finally found the loophole. I thought I had outsmarted her. Stanley talked about our future with such calm certainty that I started to believe in it, too. I started to dream again, cautiously at first, and then with an abandon that terrified me. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. My cousin Amanda, a notorious chatterbox, was on her weekly phone call with my mom. She had seen me at a grocery store with a man a few weeks before and, in a moment of thoughtless gossip, she let it slip. "Oh, Judy seems so happy with that new fellow, Stanley," was all she said. That was the spark that lit the fuse. My mom, in her own misguided way, mentioned it to Brenda within hours. My sister's ability to gather information was, I have to admit, impressive. All she had was a first name. Within 2 days, she had scoured the internet, found his company's website, his professional bio, his picture. And just like that, the game was afoot. The end came on a Tuesday. I had just finished a brutal shift at the hospital. I was exhausted, but I was happy. I had a key to Stanley's apartment, and I decided to surprise him with takeout from his favorite Thai place. I remember walking up the 3 flights of stairs to his door, feeling a light, giddy anticipation. I could already picture the look on his face. I slid my key into the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open, a smile already forming on my lips. "Honey, I'm Ho." The words died in my throat. And there they were. Tangled together in the sheets of the bed we had picked out together just 3 months earlier. But the image, as horrific as it was, wasn't the worst part. The absolute, soul-destroying worst part was Brenda's reaction. There was no gasp of shock. No flicker of shame. No panicked scramble to cover herself. She just slowly sat up, the sheet pulling around her waist, and looked at me. She looked at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated triumph. She brushed her blonde hair out of her face and delivered the line she had clearly rehearsed. "Honestly, Judy," she said, her voice dripping with a sickening, false pity as she began to leisurely gather her clothes from the floor. "I did you a huge favor." He barely lasted 10 minutes. She let out a small, cruel laugh. "You deserve so much better than that, sis." I couldn't speak. I just turned my gaze to Stanley, my heart physically aching in my chest. I was searching for something, an explanation, an apology, a sign of remorse. Anything. He just shrugged, not even bothering to pull the sheet up. "Your sister's way too hot for me not to try," he said, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "You understand, right?" I didn't understand. I felt the air leave my lungs. I just stood there, trembling, a wave of rage and humiliation so powerful it made me dizzy. Brenda sauntered past me, pausing to give Stanley a long, slow kiss goodbye, right in front of me. She walked out of the apartment, leaving me standing there like a ghost, a piece of furniture, a complete and utter nothing. That was the moment everything changed. The moment the old Judith died. Walking to my beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot, my hand was shaking so violently I dropped my keys twice before I could get the door open. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, the engine off, just staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. The tears wouldn't come. There was only a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't about love or attraction for her. This was a sport. A twisted, cruel hobby. And I was the fox. Well, the hunt was over. Brenda craved men she couldn't resist. Fine. I would give her exactly that. I would find her the most charming, the most handsome, the most irresistible man on the planet. A man so perfect on the outside that she would never think to look inside. A man who was a beautiful, shiny vessel for the poison that would destroy her from the inside out. The 40-minute drive home was a blur, but by the time I pulled into my own driveway, the gears of my revenge were already turning. The plan was beginning to form. Brenda's weakness was her defining characteristic. She was breathtakingly superficial. She was always drawn to the same type, handsome, charming men who oozed success. Men who made her feel special, chosen. She never looked past the polished exterior. She never questioned their stories, never dug into their pasts. That fatal flaw, the one she had used as a weapon against me for years, was about to become her downfall. I transformed. My grief and anger coalesced into a laser-like focus. I was no longer a nurse, a sister, a heartbroken woman. I was a researcher. An investigator. My nights, once filled with trashy TV and lonely microwave dinners, were now dedicated to my new project. I spent hours, then days, then weeks on my laptop, diving into the deepest, murkiest corners of the internet. Public records, court databases, online background check services, these were my new best friends. I was hunting for a very specific monster. And after what felt like an eternity, I found him. His name was Grant Romano. On the surface, Grant was Brenda's dream come true. His LinkedIn profile was a masterpiece of deception. It featured a professional headshot that looked like it belonged in a men's fashion magazine. He was, according to his bio, a wildly successful venture capitalist from Denver, specializing in tech startups. He was sophisticated, worldly, and devastatingly handsome. He was the perfect bait. But I wasn't looking at the surface. I was digging in the dirt. It took some time and a few paid services, but I found the real Grant. I found the messy, ugly court filings from his recent divorce, where his ex-wife had meticulously documented years of systematic financial and emotional abuse. I found the 2 separate restraining orders filed by 2 other ex-girlfriends, both telling similar stories of charm followed by control and financial ruin. And then, the jackpot, I discovered he was currently the subject of an active investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for running a fraudulent investment scheme. He wasn't a venture capitalist. He was a predator. A con artist who charmed women, drained their bank accounts, and left them in ruins. He was perfect. Now I had to get to him. I couldn't be Judith, the heartbroken nurse. I had to be someone else. I created a new LinkedIn profile under the name Catherine Sterling. I built a plausible backstory, a woman who had recently come into a modest inheritance and was looking to make her first big investment. I crafted a carefully worded message to Grant, dangling the prospect of a significant investment in one of his ventures. He responded in less than an hour. We agreed to meet for coffee at a Starbucks in downtown Denver the following week. Walking into that Starbucks, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt a strange cocktail of pure terror and a cold, exhilarating sense of power. I spotted him immediately. He was even more handsome in person. I took a deep breath and began the performance of my life. I played the part of Catherine, a little naive, a little overwhelmed by her newfound wealth, and deeply lonely. But the real masterstroke came when I steered the conversation to my family. I pulled up my phone and showed him Brenda's Instagram page. I gushed about her, my voice full of practiced awe and sibling rivalry. She's so beautiful, isn't she? She always gets what she wants. Then I let my voice crack, letting a single tear roll down my cheek. Every guy I have ever loved ends up choosing her instead, I whispered, looking down at my hands as if in shame. It just makes me feel so worthless. I risked a glance up at him through my lashes. And I saw it. His eyes lit up. It was a subtle shift, but it was unmistakable. It was the glint of a predator who had just identified a wounded animal, and beyond it, a much bigger prize. He saw a broken woman he could easily fleece, and her gorgeous sister, the ultimate trophy. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand, his voice a smooth, comforting purr. You seem like an incredible person, Catherine, he said, his gaze locking with mine. Any man who would leave you for someone else is an absolute idiot. Hook, line, and sinker. Our romance began immediately. It was a surreal, out-of-body experience. He launched the full Grant Romano charm offensive. There were lavish dinners at the Capitol Grill, a spontaneous weekend trip to a luxury resort in Aspen, endless promises of a future filled with travel and excitement. It was a textbook case of love bombing, and I watched, detached, as he went through the motions. Every compliment was a calculation. Every touch was a test. He thought he was expertly reeling me in, setting the stage for his grand financial con. He had no idea he was a puppet, and I was pulling the strings. After 3 weeks of this elaborate dance, I knew it was time. With fake tears and a trembling voice, I told him that I wanted to keep our relationship a secret from my family, especially from my beautiful, manipulative sister Brenda. I told him she had a history of stealing my boyfriends. This, I knew, was the master key. I was painting a giant, flashing neon sign over Brenda, marking her as the forbidden fruit, the ultimate challenge. Then, I delivered the invitation. My mom's birthday was coming up. A simple, casual dinner at the Olive Garden. I asked him to come as my date. He, of course, accepted. Grant thought he was walking into a quaint family dinner, a chance to solidify his position with his wealthy, naive new girlfriend, all while scoping out his next conquest. He had no idea he was walking into the crosshairs of a trap I had been meticulously crafting for weeks. The stage was set. The actors were in place. And I was ready for the show to begin. The Olive Garden was buzzing with its usual chaotic, family-friendly energy the night of my mom's birthday. The smell of garlic breadsticks hung in the air. Grant, the consummate actor, played his part to perfection. He was the most charming, attentive boyfriend imaginable. He complimented my choice of lasagna. He laughed uproariously at my dad's terrible, worn-out jokes. He even presented my mom with a beautiful bouquet of lilies, her favorite. And all the while, he treated Brenda as if she were a ghost at the table, a piece of invisible furniture. It was a masterful performance, designed to make me feel secure and cherished, all while making himself seem like an unattainable prize to my sister. And Brenda, predictable as the sunrise, could not handle it. The drug of male attention was her lifeblood, and Grant was cutting off her supply. Being ignored, especially by a man so obviously handsome and successful, was a personal affront she could not endure. She began to escalate, exactly as I knew she would. It started with small, almost imperceptible things. A light, lingering touch on his arm as she reached for the salt. Leaning in far too close to hear something he said, her hair brushing against his shoulder. Then she began whispering things to him, creating a secret, intimate world for just the two of them, right there at our family table. Her flirtation grew so blatant that even my blissfully oblivious parents started to exchange nervous glances. That was my cue. "I'll be right back," I announced cheerfully, getting up to go to the bathroom. But I didn't go into the stall. I stood in the small alcove by the door, leaving it cracked just enough to see and hear. And I watched the final act of seduction unfold. Brenda leaned across the table, her expression a mixture of seduction and conspiracy. She ran a single, perfectly manicured finger along Grant's forearm. "My sister's sweet," I heard her whisper, her voice a low purr. "But she's pretty vanilla, in every way. I could show you things she wouldn't even dream of trying." I gave them another 60 seconds. Then I walked back to the table, my timing impeccable. I feigned a gasp as I caught them discreetly exchanging phone numbers under the table. It was all the justification my performance needed. Without a word, I picked up my half-full glass of Merlot, looked Grant dead in the eye, and threw the dark red liquid squarely in his face. It dripped from his chin onto his expensive shirt. Then, for the grand finale, I burst into tears and fled the restaurant, making sure everyone saw my mascara-streaked, heartbroken face. It was, without a doubt, the performance of a lifetime. Later that night, my phone rang. It was Brenda. Her voice was an oily slick of fake concern. "Oh my God, Judy, are you okay? I am so sorry about what happened," she gushed. "Grant totally came on to me as soon as you left the table. He was so aggressive. But honestly," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you're better off without him. There was something about him that seemed really sketchy." She was laying the groundwork, building her narrative where she was the hero, saving me from a creep, all while clearing the path for herself. I played my part. I sobbed into the phone. I told her she was probably right. I told her my heart was broken into a million pieces. 2 days later, her Instagram stories were filled with videos from Grant's sleek, high-rise condo in Cherry Creek, complete with champagne flutes and skyline views. A week after that, she was head over heels in love, posting gushing captions about finding her soulmate. And 1 month after that fateful Olive Garden dinner, she had moved in with him completely and had happily given him her banking passwords for their shared future. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a silent puppet master watching her creation come to life. A cold, hard knot of satisfaction settled deep in my stomach, but it was tangled with a thin thread of unease. I knew what Grant was. I knew the kind of destruction he was capable of. Brenda was walking, blindfolded and smiling, into a pit of quicksand. And I was the one who had led her there. But then, the memories would flood back: Stanley's shrug, Brenda's smug, naked face, years of quiet heartbreaks, and I would push the unease away. She had made her bed with the stolen pieces of my happiness. Now, it was time for her to lie in it. The first tremor that shook the foundations of Brenda's perfect new life arrived via certified mail about 6 weeks later. It was a thick, intimidating envelope from a high-powered law firm. A lawyer representing Grant's ex-wife was contacting her directly. The letter, written in cold, dense legalese, alleged that Grant had hidden substantial assets during their divorce settlement. And now that Brenda's finances were legally entangled with his, she could be considered an accomplice to fraud and potentially be named in a lawsuit. She called me, her voice tight with a panic I had never heard before. "They're saying I might get sued, Judy. Can you believe the nerve of his ex-wife?" But her faith in her prince was unshakable. "But it's okay," she said quickly, her voice regaining its confidence. Grant explained everything. "She's just a bitter, jealous woman trying to cause trouble because he's finally happy." I murmured a few sympathetic phrases, things like, "That sounds awful," and "I'm sure it will be fine," all the while knowing that this was just the first wave of the tsunami. The second wave hit a month later, and it was a big one. The investment firm Grant was supposedly a partner in, the one he had convinced Brenda was the next big thing, was exposed in the news as an elaborate Ponzi scheme. Brenda had invested her entire life savings into it, $30,000 she had received as an inheritance from our grandmother. Grant had sold her a beautiful dream of doubling her money, of financial freedom. When the SEC shut the whole operation down, her dream, and her money, vanished in an instant. The phone call that night was different. The panic was replaced by raw, sobbing desperation. "It has to be a mistake," she cried, her words choked and garbled. "It can't be gone, Judy. All of it. Grant's lawyers are fighting it. He promised. He promised we would get it all back, plus interest." She was clinging to his lies like a drowning woman clings to a piece of driftwood. The moment she finally saw the real man behind the mask was the moment she tried to leave. She had found some paperwork, some bank statements that didn't add up, and for the first time, a seed of doubt began to sprout. She packed a bag while he was out. But he came home unexpectedly and found her. The charming, sophisticated man she loved simply evaporated. In his place was a monster. He grabbed her wrist, his grip like iron, and twisted until she heard a sickening snap. She screamed, but he just dragged her into the bedroom and locked the door, leaving her there with her broken arm while he raged through the apartment, smashing furniture and screaming about ungrateful, worthless women. She managed to escape the next day when he left for a meeting. She ran, leaving everything but the clothes on her back. When she finally got to her bank, hoping to salvage what little she had left, she was met with the final, devastating truth. He had emptied everything. Checking. Savings. Her 401k. It was all gone. And then the bank manager delivered the knockout blow. Grant had used her personal information to apply for a dozen high-interest credit cards and personal loans in her name. He had maxed them all out. She was not only broke, she was buried under a mountain of debt, over $80,000 she never even knew existed. The grand finale came at dawn on a gray Tuesday morning. The door to Grant's luxury condo wasn't opened with a key. It was smashed open with a battering ram. A team of FBI agents swarmed the apartment. In Grant's office, they found a trove of fraudulent documents. And on dozens of them, making her an active participant in his crimes, was Brenda's neat, cheerful signature. He had told her they were for their investments, for setting up their shared accounts. She had signed them without a second thought, blinded by what she thought was love. Those signatures made her an unwitting accomplice to securities fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Brenda's name flashed on the screen. I just sat up in bed, staring at it, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I watched it ring and ring, and then I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. I took a deep, steadying breath and pressed play. Her voice was a raw, mingled thing, barely coherent through hysterical, gasping sobs. "Judy, please, oh God, Judy, please pick up. I'm in county jail. They're saying I might go to prison." A long, shuddering sob. Grant used me, he used me for everything, and now the FBI thinks I was helping him." Her voice broke completely. "I know I hurt you, Judy. God, I know I did terrible things to you. But please. I'm begging you. I need help. Please, please help me." I listened to the message 3 times in the dead silence of my bedroom. I absorbed every drop of her terror, her desperation, her complete and utter devastation. Then, with a calm, steady hand, I pressed delete. A short, deliberate pause. If you're still listening, could you please do me a favor and like this video and comment the number 1 down below? It lets me know you hit that like button, and it tells me that you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement and means the world to me. So please, comment with the number 1, and let me tell you the rest of my story. The story broke on the local news within a couple of days. Local woman arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. It was the lead story on the Channel 7 evening broadcast, right after the introduction. And then they showed her mugshot. My sister's beautiful face, now a portrait of utter ruin. Her mascara was streaked in black rivers down her cheeks, her eyes were puffy and red, but it was the hollowness that struck me. The bright, confident, predatory light that had always danced in her eyes was completely extinguished, replaced by a vast, terrifying emptiness. My mother called me the second the segment ended, her voice a high-pitched shriek of hysteria. "Did you see it? Judith, did you see the news? You have to help her. You have to get a lawyer, you have to do something. She made mistakes, yes, but she doesn't deserve this." I waited for her frantic storm to pass, and when there was silence, I responded, my own voice eerily calm. "She made her own choices, Mom." I took a breath, letting the words hang in the air. "Just like she did with Keith. And Russell. And Walter. And Stanley." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, thick with everything left unsaid for years. When my mom finally spoke again, her voice was a faint, horrified whisper. "You knew, didn't you?" she asked. "You knew what he was." I didn't answer her. What could I say? The truth was a messy, complicated thing that couldn't be captured in a simple yes or no. Had I known Grant would break her arm, ruin her financially, and get her arrested by the FBI? Not the specific, brutal details. But had I meticulously researched him to understand that he was a human hurricane, a predator who left nothing but wreckage in his wake? Absolutely. I had handed my sister a loaded gun, and she had willingly, eagerly, pointed it at her own head and pulled the trigger. In the end, Brenda's lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for her full testimony against Grant. His trial was swift. With Brenda's testimony and the mountain of evidence the FBI had, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Brenda served 8 months in a minimum security women's facility. She came out a changed woman. A convicted felon with a credit score in ruins, a staggering amount of debt that would follow her for the rest of her life, and a permanent restraining order against the man she once thought was her soulmate. Our family, as I knew it, ceased to exist after that. The Sunday dinners, the holiday gatherings, they all stopped. My mother could no longer look me in the eye. I could see the war raging within her, the horror at what I had done, mingled with a dark, grudging respect for the sheer, methodical precision of it all. My dad, ever the quiet one, simply shook his head whenever Brenda's name came up, muttering about natural consequences and chickens coming home to roost. After she was released, Brenda packed what little she had left and moved clear across the country to Portland, Oregon. She needed to escape the shame, the whispers, the ruins of her former life. The last I heard, she was working as a barista in a small coffee shop, living in a tiny studio apartment, and slowly trying to piece her life back together. We haven't spoken a single word in over 2 years. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I look at her Instagram. It's private now, but she must have accepted a follow request from an anonymous account I made. She looks older than her years. There's a caution in her eyes that was never there before. The confident, dazzling smile is gone, replaced by something smaller, more uncertain. There are moments, usually in the dead of night, when I lie awake and wonder if I went too far. If the satisfaction of my revenge was worth the complete and utter demolition of my sister's life. But then, a slideshow of memories plays in my mind: Stanley's casual, dismissive shrug, Brenda's triumphant, naked face in his apartment, a long, painful reel of my own heartbreaks, all orchestrated for her amusement. And I know, deep down, that she got exactly what she had spent her entire life asking for, a man she couldn't resist. She just never imagined that he would, in turn, find her so easy to destroy. I started going to therapy about a year ago. It's been helpful. It's a lot to unpack. The tangled mess of guilt, anger, and grief that comes with orchestrating someone's downfall, even when that someone is the source of your deepest pain. My therapist, a kind woman with gentle eyes, often says that revenge rarely brings the lasting peace we think it will. And she's right. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel the sweet satisfaction I thought I would. Mostly, I just feel an emptiness. A quiet, hollow space inside me where all that burning, white-hot anger used to live. But I'll tell you this. I do sleep better at night. I sleep with a quiet certainty I've never known before. I sleep better knowing that my sister, Brenda, will never, ever steal another woman's boyfriend again. Some lessons, it seems, can only be learned through fire, through complete and utter devastation. And my sister, she finally learned hers the hard way.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.